All right, all right, all right. Welcome back to Misfit Nation. If you are a veteran and you are struggling or feel like you are leading towards a path of darkness, stop and think about those who are around you. Think about how they truly value you, how they will miss you. You are not alone. You need to talk to someone. Someone will listen to you. If you feel like someone in your inner circle or your family will feel like you're a burden to them, or you feel embarrassed to tell them what you're going through, call the anonymous hotline at 1-800-273-8255 and press option 1 for veterans. Someone will answer, someone will talk you through this. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you are a new listener, thanks for joining us today. Please subscribe to our show and on your favorite apps, to include the Military Broadcast Radio app, which has a host of veterans that have multiple shows. Check them all out. They're all great shows, all great people. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at _Misfit Nation. That's the _Misfit Nation. This will keep you up to date on all our latest shows, our episodes, and of course, our guests. Speaking of which, our next guest is a Colorado native and is a mountain girl at heart. She loves writing mystery and suspense thrillers with a canine flair from her small ranch southeast of Denver, where she dotes on her horses, complains about her cows, and writes to create a home for her imaginings. Inspired by life in the country, she fosters her creative side by writing, watercolor painting, quilting, and crafting stained glass. She is a member of Novelists Incorporated and Sisters in Crime. So without further ado, let's welcome Jodi Burnett, author, to the Misfit Nation. Welcome, Jodi.
Thanks, Rich. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, as I was going through your website earlier, we were talking pre-show. I've seen the dog on every cover, so that's awesome. Dogs at everyone, canine, canine, canine. And then the last three was the Flint River stuff. So there was no dog, so I was a little upset there, but I'll get over that.
Yeah, that's true. The Flint River series was my first series, and there's horses, and there are dogs in the stories, but they're not the primary character in those.
So, Jodi, if you don't mind, tell the Misfit Nation a little bit about yourself from as far back as you want to go to how you got to writing and where we are now.
Sure. Well, I always had an incredible imagination as a kid and loved to play make-believe, and was always playing with my imaginary friends until it became a little socially awkward to continue to play make-believe. So I had to bring my imagination inside. And, I grew up had 4 kids. We moved around. My husband was a Marine. So I should say, no ex-Marines, former Marine.
Don't get in trouble there.
That's right. I can get myself in big trouble. And so we had 3 of our kids were born in the military, and that was exciting and good. We adventured around the world, told my kids stories all the time, but it wasn't until they started moving away from home, and I was just heartbroken. I didn't know what I was going to do without them and who I was going to be. And my husband, he said, you ought to write a book. And what he really meant was, is there 7 easy steps to stop telling your husband about your emptiness syndrome? But I took him at his word, and I did. I wrote a book. I didn't write that book. I wrote a fiction novel, and I fell in love with writing. And so I've just been writing ever since. It's a great place for my imagination to go. So that's us.
It definitely helps you out there, especially when you had to get rid of your imaginary friends to get to your adult life and get married, right, and have your own children. I thought you were going to say your imaginary friends moved back in when they left. I was waiting for that to come up. That would have been great.
that would have been a whole different story.
Was there any influencers that influenced you to write, like when you were growing up, maybe a teacher, your mom, or someone that wrote a lot? Maybe you was like, oh, I want to do that when I grow up too, but just put it on hold as you went through life?
Yeah, well, I had never really thought about being a writer, but I did have my 8th grade English teacher, Mrs. Scornavacchio. She was just tremendous. She also fostered in me a love of reading. And I didn't like to participate in the class conversation. We had to read books, and then we had to have a discussion. And I wasn't really getting it, or I didn't like it. And so she pulled me aside, and she invited me to read some books that she suggested. And the first book that she had me read was a book called Christie, and it's a historical fiction. And it was so good. And it was just opened up a whole new world for me. And then she encouraged me to write for the extra credit that I needed since I wasn't participating in class. And I wrote a play. I don't even know if I ever finished it, but I started writing a play. And so it was just a wonderful teacher igniting in me and a love of learning that I didn't have before. And so that was probably the most influence I had as far as teachers went. I had a really terrific English education in high school and in college. So, just with that, you have literature and things like that. But again, I never really thought about being a writer at all. That was never something that crossed my mind.
Now look at you, have 11 books now.
I know.
You're still rolling. I'm sure you still have a bunch of on your computer right now that are going at the same time as we're talking here, and more ideas going through as we're talking. How did you decide on the first set of books that you wrote, the series?
Well, the saying goes, write what you know. And so I thought about it. Well, I'm a military wife, so I know that lifestyle. I know what it is to, I've hung around Marines for most of my, young adult years. And also I had a business in my 30s and 40s. I had a business called Horses Healing Hearts, where I worked with at-risk kids, doing equine therapy. So I'd take mostly like kids from the foster system, and we would take them out, they and their social worker, we'd come out to the arena and do different kinds of therapy activities with them using horses. And it is a fascinating work. It's gratifying. It's so much faster than office therapy. You take these kids, they've been in office therapy with a psychologist their whole life. They know the game way better than you do. And they know what to say or whatever. But if you take them out into an arena, and now they're out there with, say, 3 horses at liberty, they're big, they're a little scary, they don't know what they're going to do. And you have them try to accomplish different tasks. All of their coping methods sort of show up, and you can deal with it in real time. So if anger is the way they deal with something, or if shutting down is the way they deal with stress, then you can say, this is what happened. Let's talk about some new skills. Let's practice those new skills and do it right now. And then it just makes it much faster than saying, okay, let's work on this next week. Next week you come back and I ask you how it went or whatever. It's more effective, and it's right there in real time. So it's an awesome work. But long story short, I then combined those two things. So Run for the Hills was the first book, and one of the main characters is a Marine who comes back from Afghanistan, and he's one of his friends was killed, and he feels like it was his fault. He feels like he should have been able to prevent it, or at least maybe it should have been him. And he just goes through all of that struggle, and he comes back to his wife at home had left him, but he now has a teenage daughter who's estranged, and he's trying to deal with all this. And he's, of course, struggling. He's not doing very well. Well, the therapist, who's the female side of the main character, she is a social worker that actually comes from Colorado, but she goes up to Wyoming. She's on the run from a psychopathic ex-client who's trying to kill her. So she runs away and hides, and she finds herself in this small town in Montana. And that's how she gets involved with that family. There's 3 brothers in the family. And so there's 3 books in the series. Each book is one of the brothers' stories. But the first one is his name is Cade Stone. And so anyway, she helps him deal with, learning how to deal with his daughter, learning how to deal with his anger, doing some biofeedback and things like that, so he can begin to feel the emotions coming on before they do and before they explode and that kind of thing. And that was the first book. And so I wrote it out of my heart, I guess, out of my understanding and experience with military guys and what they've all been through.
Life journeys and life stories can go into a book easily, and that's the best books usually written loosely based off of reality, and that brings the audience closer to it, I think, a lot better. And you brought up equine therapy. Where you are, there's a large group of veterans, a large veteran population just outside of Denver there in Colorado Springs area, and I'm sure a lot of them would love equine therapy. And I know when I was doing my first job out of the military, we actually had volunteers that worked at equine therapy places, and they were always happy every time I talked to them. So I know it works.
It's incredible. It's just incredible therapy. Even if it's just you go out and spend some time in the presence of these animals that are so calm and they're so gentle, but they're big, and that there's a lot you can really identify with being big, and that animal could kill you but chooses not to, is gentle, and it's some really terrific metaphors and wonderful work.
Definitely. I believe I love animals a lot more than people sometimes. Like you talk about therapy. I don't do well with the therapy that the VA tries to give, so I do things other ways to create a better way for me. So I think
Yeah, exactly.
no two people are
Exactly.
the same,
Yeah.
so it's hard to say what'll work for
Sure.
everyone. But I'm sure animals
Exactly.
work a lot better.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you did all this independently, all your authoring, all your publishing stuff?
Yes, I'm an independent author, so that means I publish myself, and I love that because I'm in complete control of my entire career, good or bad. So if it doesn't work, it's my fault too. but but I like being able to make all the choices and the time decisions and things like that. It's quicker, it moves quicker than traditional publishing, and I prefer it. It's not for everybody, but I
Yeah.
love it.
I've met a lot more recently that like the independent side more than going through a publishing house and having to deal with deadlines, or it has to be this way, not your way, not the way your creative mind wants, but our way, because this is the way our publishing house goes.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, there are hiccups on the independent side if you have to warehouse things and stuff like that. But if you're selling, that kind of washes out. It kind of washes in the end.
Yeah, well, most things are print on demand, so you're not really having a warehouse problem. So that's wonderful. So that
Yes.
you can do that in a lot of different ways in different places, or of course, ebooks and that kind of thing. I mean, certainly traditional publishing, there's some benefits to that, and there's benefits to independent publishing. It just depends on your nature and what you like. I like to be able, I like to choose my cover, and in traditional publishing, primarily your publisher will choose your cover, and if you don't get picked up by a publisher, it doesn't mean you don't have a great book. It just means they can't sell it right then. So it's kind of hard to tell. On the independent side, your book is a success if it sells. I mean, the market is what tells you if it's good or not. And so that's kind of helpful, I think.
On the publishers, they have to make money, so they're thinking about that bottom
Absolutely.
line right away. As
Yeah.
soon if they sign you and give you, I guess a contract with a money clause in there, they have to make that plus in order to break even
Right.
and pay for their people outside. So I understand the business side. I think the independent way, like you said, is much better for the author, and especially once you get it going. Now you're on 11 books. I'm sure it's like easy, the backside of your hand now. Okay, I know I have to just get my I have enough ISBNs left. I can do this and move forward and get this going.
There is that.
Yeah. So what made you get into like the suspense novels, or even joined Sisters in Crime?
Well, I just belonged to a local writing group when I first started. I didn't belong to Sisters in Crime right away, but as I started to write Run for the Hills, it was supposed to be sort of a romantic suspense, which it isn't. And I started having this character showing up in this story that was, a little dark, and then he behaved in dark ways, and he was creepy, and I just found myself really enjoying writing this, which sort of shocked me because I didn't know where that was coming from, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the tension and the suspense, and so over time that's really what I've narrowed into now. And then of course after that series I moved into the FBI Canine series. And so that's a lot of, police work, FBI work, and dogs there. And almost all of the military, or all of the FBI agents in my books are, veterans. And so they connect on that level. They connect because they all work together in the fictional Denver FBI Canine unit. But they have different jobs. Like, one is a tracker, one is the captain or the head of the unit, and there's a bomb dog in one, and stuff like that. I wrote a book in that series, there's a book called Concealed Cargo, and that has to do with human trafficking. And that I just wrote. That was another book from my heart, just because I think that we really need to know that this is more prevalent than we think it is. And I just really wanted to tell that story. So it's not terribly graphic, but it was a painful book to research for sure.
I'm sure. And seeing the plight of the people being trafficked, and seeing what they go through, and especially the young women and girls that get trafficked, and young boys too, across the world. It's not just on our southern border, it's the whole world where this happens. And
exactly.
And
for me, it was a little shocking that it was so prevalent right here in the United States. And it's not necessarily foreign nationals either. It's our own children. And it's, I guess I was naive to that. And so I'm glad I did the research but yikes, we need to know, and we need to know how to help if we can. So.
In the the interstate system we have, the Eisenhower interstate system that was built for a positive purpose, but it's used for many, many negative purposes because it's so easy to get places and move not just people, but any kind of illicit thing you want to move across this country. You can move there fairly easily. So, I mean, I'm sure your research opened a lot of eyes there.
Yeah. And in Colorado, we have I-25, which goes, cuts the nation in half north to south, and I-70 cuts the nation in half east to west. So we are right in the center of it. Yeah. Lots of stuff going through.
Yeah. When I lived in Kansas, right off of I-70, and the police would just sit there and catch people every day with something. Yeah. Every day it'd be a big news article on I-70. Oh, maybe take a different route. I don't know. How much research did you do with like canine handling and stuff to get that into the book?
Well, I had the fortune of meeting another author who was writing canine books, and her brother was an FBI agent in on the hostage rescue team. And I was able to interview him, and he gave me just so much information. And in fact, is the source of all of my commands. When I use dog commands in my books, they're check commands, and I got all of those from him. So that's what he used with his dog. He had a German Shepherd, but the dogs I primarily, and I kind of have now focused on, is the Belgian Malinois, which I know is heavily used in the military, and primarily because German Shepherds are fantastic, but they have hip issues and they're heavier. A Belgian is lighter. They're only, they can do anything. They're just incredible dogs. If you ever have a chance to get on YouTube and look up some of their antics, they can jump like, I don't know, it seems like 12 to 20 feet high in the air, and they're just amazing, and they've got a ton of energy. The big joke is you don't really want to own one because unless you're going to be out there running with them and all the time, training with them all the time, they have too much energy to be in the house. They're not a house pet. But I've also had the opportunity to interview a couple of canine police officers. There's one who lives in our small town that's local, and I just recently blogged about an interview I did with Castle Rock. Castle Rock's about half an hour south of Denver, and their police department has a great canine unit. And those guys were so awesome. They would let me come in. They showed me all around, and we couldn't actually meet their dogs in person because they're bite dogs, and apparently they'll bite you. Like they don't know anything else. So we were allowed to see them behind the glass door. Beautiful dogs. One was a Belgian Malinois, one was a Belgian Shepherd, and they were just incredible. But so that's the primary information that I have is from talking to these guys who are in the field.
It's great to get all that information on. We have a Belgian that lives across the street from us, and he's a pretty wild fellow. His name's Gunner. His mom just came home from deployment, and very excited boy. He's 2 years old now, so she does a lot of things with him, dresses him up and stuff. It's like dress up time with him. But like you said, he's out every day. They're throwing frisbees to him, throwing ball to him. He hugs people when they come down the street. So he's a good boy, but he has a lot of energy.
Yeah. Well, and the police that I talked to said that, you can't outrun them. So trying to ever, exhaust them isn't going to happen. But the way that they keep their dogs sort of in check is by mentally engaging them. So it's the mental training that helps them, to calm down. And so that, whatever you're doing, whatever they're doing, whatever your neighbor's doing is all good stuff.
Make them work for that money, make them
work.
And on your small farm where you play with your animals, do you have dogs? Do your dogs play with the animals too, or are they not interact?
They do. I have a lab. I have a yellow lab and a Rottweiler.
Oh, wow.
And and they're great. We just love them. And of course they're out, they've learned not to chase the chickens. They get in trouble if they try to chase the chickens. But what we discovered, and then I've since researched this, but my Rottweiler naturally herds the cattle. So we have about 8 cows right now. And when we're trying to get him to go somewhere, so the lab goes in the middle and just disperses them. And he barks and jumps around. He thinks it's a big game. And we have to actually keep him away because he's going to get kicked. He's not really aware, he just thinks it's a big party. But the Rottweiler gets, he rounds them up, and he goes and he'll nip at their heels and then bounce back so they can't. And it's just fascinating to watch because he's never had any training. And so I looked it up, and sure enough, in his heritage, the Rottweiler was actually a herding dog well before it was a guard dog of any sort. So
Wow.
I thought that was kind of interesting. So
A natural herding dog. I always thought of it as a great attack dog, but
well,
like
yeah,
a teddy bear.
right. He's an absolute teddy bear, great with my grandkids, great with kids, great with anybody. He's super kind. But I have to tell a funny story. So when we first moved out here, my Roddy he was only about 6 months old. So he's just learning, and he is like a fur ankle bracelet with me. He will not leave my side. So, but he's asleep, and we had his dog bed on the other side of our bed. And my husband was swatting moths with the fly swatter because why not, I guess. And he's making all this racket, and you can see his shadow on the wall. Well, so he swats and he goes, oh, like this. Well, my dog wakes up, and all he sees is this shadow of this swatting motion and a grunt. And then he comes around the corner of that bed. I thought both of us were like, whoa. Just, he didn't hit me. I think that he thought that my husband, Chris, I think he thought Chris hit me. And so I laughed at him. I said, boy, you better behave around me because my dog isn't going to take any of your nonsense. And I mean, that's the only sign I've ever seen him be very aggressive. And then he backed right off when he realized it was Chris. But I think it was just, I feel very comfortable, if I'm out here alone, that, he's perfectly fine unless you are aggressive towards me, and then he's not going to like it. So I'm good with a dog like that.
They'll turn the switch on right there. That's good.
Yeah.
I can just see the lab in the middle of the cows jumping up and down. That's what mine would do, because he thinks we have cows that come behind our house, and he just looks at them like they're one of his friends. So he doesn't understand what's going on at all.
Yeah, just another big dog.
Yeah, just a giant dog like me. Here I am. I can just see him running and jumping in the middle and getting kicked in the head too. So
right. You have to be careful.
So what's your time of day when you write the best? Is it when you wake up, or just anytime you get an urge, you just go write?
I write best in the morning. So I start writing around 9, and I write, I really try to get about 2,500 words as a minimum in a day. And then I kind of do other business stuff. I usually do the business in the afternoon. But I don't stay up late. I'm not a night owl. I'm up at 5 just by nature. And so I like to start early. So that's my most creative time, in the morning.
I've noticed with a lot of the authors I speak to, and myself, morning is the best, because I think everything's fresh and it comes out easier. And since my lab wakes me up at 4 every morning because he thinks that's what time he has to eat or he'll die. So right. It's 4 a.m. for Enzo and the whole herd at that point. So or he's going to die.
How dare you not feed him until 4 a.m? You should be up much earlier.
He wants it, believe me. He sits there staring at you, then he starts punching. So.
Labs are awesome.
Yeah, they're great. They're a great animal. So if you can give tips to an aspiring author, 3 tips, what would that be?
My first thing I would say, especially if you're thinking about independent publishing, is just hit publish. Just do it. You don't die. And it's so scary, and you're so worried that what people are going to think, and how are people going to receive this book, or everybody's going to hate it. It's a weird thing being a creative person, because you're afraid you have to create, but then you're afraid to put it out there in the world. And honestly, certainly the independent publishing community is so supportive, crazy supportive. If you need help, there's a million places that you can go for it, and people are so willing to help. But just do it. Just do it and get it out there. Your next one will be better, and you'll get better as you go. But you can always take it up, put it down, whatever you need to do. But just do it. Don't be afraid. Do it. The other would be to get involved in a writing community and a group. And so like Sisters in Crime is obviously for mysteries and thrillers and all those kinds of things. I like to belong to that, because when we have guest speakers, they're like the coroner or somebody, cool, talking about stuff I wouldn't know otherwise. And so that's neat. But there's any genre you write has a group. Most areas in the country have a local writing group, or one that's close enough that you can, attach to. And there's even national groups too that are great, but Facebook groups also, and you can find writers all over the place, and it's a great friendly group. 3, huh? Get good tools. There's great tools out there to use. I write in a software called Scrivener, and I do my first self edit pass through a software called Pro Writing Aid, which is kind of like Grammarly. I don't know if you've heard of that, but you can put any piece of writing through it, and it just checks your grammar and spelling, and it checks everything. If anything you want it to, like, have you used a word too many times, or are you saying a phrase too many times, any of that kind of stuff. And then I also use a formatting program called Vellum, which is worth its weight in gold. So those would be 3 tools that I would highly recommend.
See, you were stumbling on the 3rd tip, and you came up with 3 tools on the 3 tips. So
3 tools, 3 tips.
See, you went over and above and beyond what we needed.
Overachieving.
Right, see, that's that living in a marine life right there. It's good.
That's right. That's right.
Jodi, how does someone get in contact with you if they want to just talk to you, or maybe have you on their show, or have you come speak to a young writing group?
Yeah, great. Everywhere you want to find me, you can find on my website. So that's the easiest place to go. That is jodi-burnett.com, and it's Jodi with an I, Burnett with 2 T's. And I have 3 free books on that website. If you want to sample my writing, you can look at that and check it out. And so you can do all my social media, you can find on there, and you can just hit contact me if you want to email me, and it comes right to me, and I answer all my emails. So awesome. I'd be happy to hear from anybody.
Love when people actually answer your emails. That's great.
Right. How strange.
That's weird. Well, Jodi, it's been great chatting with you this evening. I hope you get back to your animals there and have a good night. And I'll try to get to mine and stop them, whatever they're doing down there. I can hear them, but hopefully they're not killing anything or themselves. And I look forward to seeing
thank you.
The next books in your series.
Great. Thank you. And thanks so much for having me tonight, Rich.
No problem.